Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hey, welcome to the Seed to Harvest workshop. We're excited that you're on here. It looks like we already have a good group of people.
Great group tonight.
Yeah. So very quickly at the beginning, tonight is our homestead focus. And I'm Paul Deisinger, by the way.
And I'm Edwin.
And we're a father-son team. And the co-founders of Seed Time have backgrounds in small farming, doing quite a variety of vegetables, herbs, berries, did a local CSA, stuff like that, but have been gardening throughout the years as well. On with us here is our colleague, Luke Hammond. And Luke is also an expert grower, has grown in Arizona.
That might be a little bit of a stretch. I've grown a few things.
No, man. I am always impressed with the insights that Luke pulls out when growing questions and all that kind of stuff. So currently grows in Missouri. He's done small farming and awesome part of our team. And we have a special guest on with us tonight, Stephen Cornett. We are very excited to have you join us.
Wonderful. And I'm going to be here. I'm going to cut Paul off because I want to say some nice things about Stephen because he is amazing. I was actually just at his farm about a week and a half ago, and I was jaw dropped. Just what he's doing, the way he just his practical approach to how he grows is just so inspiring. So if you aren't familiar with Stephen with Nature's Always Right, I encourage you to jump onto YouTube, check out and Google Nature's Always Right. Stephen Cornett. It's all about just really solid technical growing, and he goes so deep into really cool types of things that I'm fascinated by, like Korean natural farming and JDAM and all other microbiome stuff. So we kind of nerd out and geek out on some of that together, and so I just really value my relationship with Stephen. And so, Stephen, do you have anything else you want to say about yourself? Maybe you should say a little bit how you started.
Sure, yeah. Well, hey, everybody. I'm Stephen Cornett. Really, it's an honor to be here with you guys and get to share with you guys a little bit of my journey and some of the things I've learned along the way. I started in 2011 in the summer. Didn't know anything. Didn't even like gardening at the time. But my best friend, Jared Smith, he got bit by the gardening bug. And because we were best friends, we were just talking about all this stuff and nutrition and things at that time. And so started to help him garden, and then he got the opportunity to farm his family's land. And so we started a market garden together. And I helped him do that for about a year and a half and got a ton of growing experience. We were just farming 24/7. And that's kind of how I got my introduction into farming. And, our philosophy from the beginning was to grow food as medicine. So that's kind of been the foundation of everything that I've done since the beginning. So, let's mimic God's design. That's going to be the ultimate way to grow, because I don't believe that we can improve upon nature. So that's why I'm against GMOs and using toxic chemicals and things like this, because this is getting away from God's design, where that's going to create the most optimal health for human beings.
Yeah. So Stephen, now, you have this farming background, and now you have transitioned more to homestead, and you're teaching people how to homestead, how to grow their own food at a homestead level. And I'm really excited because we're going to be building out your homestead plan here with everyone in just a little bit. And in just a minute, we're going to pull up some slides also and show some pictures of what you've done. And real quickly, as we get in, I want to make sure that everything is running smoothly. I don't see anybody going crazy in the chat, so it sounds like you can see and hear us, which is awesome. We also want to throw up a little poll here. This is a poll asking, what kind of gardener are you? A large-scale, small farmer, small-scale farmer, homesteader, home gardener? It's just always fun to see the group that we have on these live events. And along with that, put in the chat if you have a heart to what your gardening goal is, what your homesteading goal is. Is it food security? Is it better nutrition, health? It would just be really fun to see what your goals are for your garden, for your homestead. And while you're doing that, I'm going to transition back over to Luke and Stephen, and let's pull up some of those slides just to give people a glimpse into the world, into your world, Stephen, because we're going to be taking that and we're going to be building it out in seed time in just a minute here, which I know is what everyone is on here for. So we're going to move into that pretty quickly, but we want to give a little bit more of an intro and picture of what your homestead looks like. It's pretty awesome, by the way.
So while we're doing that, one of the goals of this evening is kind of geared with the theme of homesteader. So we're going to use that language over and over and over again, because I feel like many people that are coming at this from a homesteading perspective have very different planting goals, very different time restraints. It may be a little bit larger scale than a kitchen garden, or somebody that's just kind of like supplementing that might be growing for just quality and flavor. But they might be growing for different purposes. And I think a lot of times new homesteaders or new gardeners really struggle with how to plan their garden out from their harvest in mind and then working their way back. And so that's some of the stuff that we're going to lean on Stephen for. We're going to plan out his homestead garden for 2024. It's going to be really exciting. We're going to do that live while we do a lot of like gardening talk and questions in the decisions about that. So without further ado, here's a slide of Stephen's market garden in California. And Stephen, I just want you to talk about it. Talk about your early operations and how you learned the planning side of gardening. Yeah. That is sharp.
Thank you. So this is my market garden in San Diego. This is after doing Jared's Real Food, I eventually went on and wanted to start my own farm. And me and my wife lived in a little granny flat on this property with some awesome family friends, and they graciously allowed me to farm their backyard. So what you're looking at is there's 18 45-foot beds, 2.5 foot wide. So the standard market garden size right there. I eventually expanded into my neighbor's yard and then another property down the street. So if you guys have ever seen like Curtis Stone, the urban farmer, I was really inspired by him, and I learned a lot of sort of the business aspects of growing and selling food from him, kind of mimicked a lot of the systems that he used. So I specialized in salad greens. You know, as a market gardener, you have your beds planted 24/7. You never leave them unplanted. It's very intensive growing, and you're focusing on the highest profit margin plants. So salad mix was my #1 seller. And I did very well by growing that. The other big thing I did in my market garden was trying to produce. I did about 90% of the inputs, like my own fertilizers, my own compost. They mentioned Korean natural farming and jadam, so I made some of my own inoculants and compost teas and things like that is how I fed my garden. And you can kind of see up in the upper left corner there, I had about 20 chickens or a few more at certain times. And they produced a ton of compost for me that I fed back into the gardens. So that's always been a focus of mine, is trying to show people how they can do this at a very low cost, but do things better at better levels of organic than, you know, an organic certified person. And I proudly said at the farmer's market that I am not certified organic, and I'm proud to not be, because I use 0 pesticides, 0 herbicides, and I actually make all of my own fertilizer. So you can actually trust the nutrients that are in your food are at a very high level because I'm doing it that way. That's a great sales pitch if you guys are into beyond organic techniques at the market.
Yeah. Awesome. So from that, you had kind of this transition into where you're at now, where you I wouldn't say abandoned market gardening, because you're still using all the principles at play, but you're no longer doing that as the business side of that. And so you've kind of drifted into this homestead space. Was that because of like the YouTube channel taking off?
Yeah, that was a big part of it. You know, I ultimately, ever since I got into farming, and whenever you get bit by the bug, maybe the permaculture bug or whatever it may be, you have these dreams of buying land someday and building a bigger farm, doing things at a bigger scale, raising animals. So, you know, I'd always had that dream since 2011. And, you know, me and my wife worked really hard. We built up both of our businesses, and, you know, God made it able that we were able to buy this property. And so it's 16 acres, and this backyard garden, what is it? It's 11 beds that are 30 feet long by 3 foot wide. And then right there, we're looking at 8 raised beds that are 3 foot by 12 foot. So it's, you know, it's a decent sized garden for me and my wife. Like, we can grow most of the veg that we eat.
And Stephen, where is this located?
This is in East Tennessee.
East Tennessee.
Outside of Chattanooga.
Awesome.
That's a salad from our garden that everything's grown by us. You know, one of the big journeys that I had the last 3 years that I've been in this property has been animals, actually. I'm not going to get into animals tonight, but so I've learned how to raise and process my own pigs, sheep, chickens, rabbit. So that's been a big part of my journey the last 3 years. And so that's beyond doing just the gardens. I have all those animals, plus I have my own mushrooms. So like tonight for dinner, I had pork shoulder, green beans and carrots that we had blanched and frozen, shiitake mushrooms, and then rice on the side. We didn't grow the rice, but so, you know, I'm trying to produce like the majority of my calories on site. But you know, I get my beef from a farmer locally that I know. I get my raw milk from a farmer locally that I know. So I'm trying to do the best I can. I'm not trying to raise everything 100%. I don't really recommend that anybody raises 100% of their food. It's just not really, I don't think it's efficient, honestly. So, you know,
right.
Finding those few local farmers that can produce some of those things that maybe you're not as interested in, or like, I'm not trying to get into dairy animals personally.
Chores.
It's the ultimate responsibility as far as farming goes. You're never going on vacation if you have a dairy animal. So
yeah. Well, hey, thank you so much for that introduction on your farm. We do have a couple people in the chat that are saying, hey, it's a little bit quiet. Can you talk a little bit louder, Stephen? So if you can do that as we keep going, that would be awesome. At this point, we have already done a little bit of planning, because we want you to understand that this is going to be as quick as possible to plan out your garden. But when you know your planting schedule, that makes a little bit of the speed going on, because you don't have to dialogue back and forth. So Stephen has already supplied us with a list of vegetables that he plans on growing in 2024. We've seen his garden space that he has. And now we want Paul to kind of just give us a quick introduction on how to put this in the system. We're going to use seed time for this. He's going to bring it up on the screen. He's going to show you that. And then from that point, we're going to talk about succession planting and figuring it out. So the first thing is going to be, he's going to walk you through exactly how to input all the crops that you want to grow. This would be the seed packets that you're collecting and purchasing. And then we'll start working our way backwards in the plan. So, Paul?
Yeah. So as we get started here, here's what's going to happen. In just a second, I'm going to pull up the plan like Luke was talking about. And I do want to make note of, before I do that, I know people have questions as we go along, and we should have hit this up at the very beginning. We are going to have a Q&A section at the end. So if you have questions, hold those questions. And at the end, we're going to do those. Other people are asking, how long is this going to be? We have planned this build to be out within an hour, right? So we want, from when we start to when we finish building out here, we're going to do everything we can to fit it into an hour. Might be a little bit less. We're definitely not going to try and go more. So you guys ready?
If you do have questions, you can put them in the question and answer Q&A part of the chat. That's helpful for us, because we can't always find them scrolling through the.
Yeah. All right. So to get started here, we are going to set up a garden in Seed Time. And many of you have access to Seed Time already. If you don't, there was a link in your registration email that gave you a link to where you could grab a free account to Seed Time. And the very first thing that you do when you jump in is set up the settings for your calendar. So we're just going to pick a zip code here in Tennessee. And when you drop in that location, it's going to tell you your growing zone. It's going to pull up your average frost dates. It does a lot of this stuff for you automatically. If you want to get more detailed, you live in a specific microclimate, for those of you that are a little bit more geeky, you can go in and you can manually change these, right? So you can change it to a different frost date, but it's going to pull up the information based on your location. Then you can come down. We're going to hit save changes, and we're going to move along here pretty quickly because we've got a lot to build out a garden an entire homestead, right? So we are building out the Nature's Always Right homestead. And this is the calendar view in seed time. There's a couple different calendar views. You'll get to see them as we go along here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through, first of all, adding a few crops. I've got a whole list here that we're going to be adding in here, right? So we're going to add a few crops in here, and then I'm going to plug away at adding more crops. And my dad and Luke and Steven are going to have a three-way conversation as I do that. And then we're going to kind of go back and forth between the build and then talking about tips and tricks with gardening. Okay. So that's the way it's going to work. I'm going to click add a crop to add our first crop in. And our first crop is cabbage. So I'm going to start typing in cabbage. I can pull it up from the drop down, and you don't have to select a variety, but we're going to put varieties in for most of these. So we've got Napa Bilko cabbage here, and Seed Time will give you automatic recommended settings of when to seed that cabbage for your next season, basically, right? So in this case, we're just going to use the default settings. We're going to hit schedule, and it's going to drop that cabbage into our calendar. It's going to tell us when to seed it, when to transplant it, and the expected harvest time for that cabbage based on its days to maturity. In fact, there are other tasks that Seed Time will give little reminders for as well, like bed preparation and maybe some cultivation reminders as well that you can turn on or off depending if you want to see them or not. So we've got one cabbage in here. We've got another cabbage that we're going to pull in here. This time we're going to pull in Copenhagen, right? And we will schedule it. And you'll notice that Copenhagen has a little bit different days to maturity. But otherwise it's pretty similar. I'm going to also add in here some green beans because I want to show you. Let's do some bush green beans. And we are going to do provider. And I'm going to come down to the advanced settings this time. And you'll notice that in the advanced settings, there is at the top scheduling of your seeding date. Right. And you can do that either relative to the frost, or you can set a manual date. You'll see me doing some of this as we go along, switching between the two, setting some manually. In this case, we're going to actually seed these right around to the last frost. We're going to direct seed them. You can come down, you can adjust the plant spacing, which we'll get into more later when we build the layout. Days to maturity, harvest window length, you can adjust all of that. I'm going to go ahead and schedule these green beans in here as well. So as I continue building this out, you'll see me going through and, adjusting some of those settings, putting a lot of these in with default times as well. I'm going to go ahead and plug away at doing this. I'm going to transition it back over to my dad, Luke, Steven. Take it away while I finish out adding these crops.
So Steven, one thing that I'm always interested in is how do you choose what you're going to grow?
Yeah, so that's changed a lot. And you guys, someone mentioned that the mic was a little bit low. I'm going to try to talk louder, and let us know in the chat if the volume is still low, and I'll try to change something else. So being on the homestead, it's a completely different thought process than a market garden. Market garden's all about profit and making money. And, a lot of times I didn't even get to eat my produce because I was trying to sell it all. But on the homestead, I'm trying to grow the food that my family likes to eat. And that is the thing that you should focus on. So for me, potatoes, onions, carrots, we like to make kimchi. My wife is from South Korea, so the Napa cabbage is important for us. Garlic is huge. Good garlic is really hard to come by. A lot of the garlic in the United States is from China. So I like to grow my own garlic. I like to grow my own medicine. So I started to grow my own turmeric this last year as well. So I focus in on a lot of those sort of things that not only provide a lot of calories, but store extremely well. So my garlic, my potatoes, all my tubers and rhizomes, I've actually grown them to the point where I have enough to eat for a lot of the year, and I have enough seed to plant for the next year. So we can kind of get into some of those techniques about how I do that.
Great.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective to move from, you know, I think that's a homesteader uniqueness where it's like bulk. You're trying to grow a lot and you're trying to store these crops. How many, like onions, potatoes, you know, some of the sweet potatoes, some of those things, what would you be shooting for in terms of successions throughout the year? Is that a like one and done and like let it go out throughout the year? Or what's that look like for you?
So I like to do at least 2 successions of most of my crops just to guarantee that I'm going to have enough to eat plus have enough seed to grow. Now, when you're figuring this out, I really recommend that you guys take really good notes on what you planted and the yield that you got at the end of the year, and really to determine like what does your family really want to eat. And you know, if some of you had kids, you know, their tastes change over the years too. So you really just want to keep good track of that. And so for me, I have a 3-foot by 30-foot beds. So if I do 1 bed of potatoes, that's a lot of potatoes for me. Like one of my sweet potato beds, I got 50 pounds. So 50 pounds can pretty much get me and just me and my wife through the winter, and I can have enough for seed. So, you know, it takes about a year or 2 to grow and to figure that out. But, you know, think about what your family eats in a week. Like, what are you buying at the grocery store? Are you buying like a 5-pound bag of potatoes and that lasts you 2 weeks? Well, just kind of multiply that out to figure out, well, okay, to make it through 4 months, then I would need 40 pounds. So kind of like that is how I would judge it, just based upon what you're buying at the grocery store and farmer's market, and just use some math. And that'll give you a rough estimate of what you should try to grow. Now you might be wondering, well, I don't know, once I put this potato or this pepper out there, how much yield am I going to get? Well, that's a hard thing to really tell you, because how fertile is your ground? Is the compost that you're using really good? Are you going to accidentally buy compost that has herbicides in it and then that crop fails? You know, that's something I've experienced before. So there's we're dealing with nature. There's a lot of variables. So, but you can always use Google. I default to searching things online. If I don't know, I'll just search what is the average yield for potatoes, and then you can find out, well, it's for this many square feet, you'll get 20 pounds, and you just do a little bit of math, and this is how you can come up with some basic estimates for yourself. And then it comes down to you taking good notes on your garden, which Seed Time has a great journal in there for you guys to keep track of that, or just do it on a pen and paper. And this is what I did for my market garden. You know, this is how I figured out how much do I grow for market every week. Well, I have to have good notes to figure that out. And it's the same thing when you're growing food for your family.
Right. Some of the questions in the chat, or the chatter is, what software do you use? Seed Time. Seed Time is relatively new. Stephen just found out about Seed Time, and so we just calculated his good notes and are putting it in the system for him. And Luke, that's a part of it. Yeah.
I want to jump in here because I just came to a crop. Yes. In Seed Time, you'll notice that we have a bunch of crops that are built into Seed Time already, right? But hey, we have some crops that aren't built into the database yet, and you may want to end up adding your own crops in. So one of them is, for example, asparagus. And you can create a custom category here. So I'm going to create a custom category for asparagus. And you can create custom varieties. You may have seen me doing that with another crop here a little bit earlier. Asparagus, Seed Time is primarily built for annuals right now. We're going to be adding perennial support. And of course, asparagus is a perennial. So we're kind of hacking the system here. But I'm going to switch over and do this as a manual date. We're going to put it in March 1 here. And what we're going to do is I'm going to put it as a direct seed, just because you may be like planting the crowns or something like that. Well, it could go either way here. We'll just put in 12 inches here. Days to maturity, you're going to watch me here in just a second, because we're going to actually move the harvest time to the next year. So I'm going to put in a like a 4-week harvest, days of maturity. I'm just going to put in a number here for now. We're going to schedule this asparagus. Then if I come over here to a timeline view of my crops, this is a nice feature here in Seed Time where you can actually see your crops built out on a timeline. And for those of you that were wondering about the software, we'll share with you at the end here how you can grab your own Seed Time account. In fact, like I said earlier, there's a link in your registration email as well. But I'm going to filter this down just to look at the asparagus here, because really that asparagus, especially if you planted it there, then is not going to be harvested until the next spring, and asparagus really should go like 3 years of growing before you actually harvest it. So what I'm going to do is I unlocked this task series, and I'm just going to drag the harvest time. We'll ignore the protection warnings here.
I don't know if I didn't catch you unlocking that task series.
All right, I will show you how you unlock that task series. Asparagus in our area here is probably going to start harvesting towards the end of April into May, maybe into the beginning of June. There's this little toggle right here that locks the task series together or unlocks it. So if it's unlocked, then you can move like your harvest, and it doesn't move the seeding time. If you lock it like this, and you come back to your other crops here, if I move this carrots planting, it's going to move the harvest date and the bed preparation date, which is super helpful for moving plantings around in your plan, as well as, life happens, right? And you didn't get it seeded 1 week, and so you got to come back and adjust your schedule, right? And so you can just move it forward. By the way, for those of you that may be wondering as well, these little when I move this, Seed Time has built in some warnings for it. So if it's a cool weather crop and it's getting pushed, too far into the summer, it says, hey, just keep an eye on that. It's not something, it doesn't stop you from moving it, but it says, hey, keep an eye on it. Same with moving backwards. It might say, hey, this is you may want some protection for this crop. So just wanted to give a quick heads up on that as I built that one out.
Awesome. I love that. Just to answer a little bit of what's going on in the chatter in regards to Seed Time, the app. So we are building out this calendar. For those who may have come in late, we're building out this calendar, and then we're going to build out where it's going in Steven's garden. We've looked at some drone shots of his plan. And so within Seed Time, there's something called layout. And in layout, you can actually see exactly where your crops are going to be planted. Additionally, we're going to lean on Steven and his homesteading experience to just talk a little bit about all the things that you would want to know within a homestead garden, maybe companion planting, how to grow, those kinds of things. So that's where we're going to jump into. Does that sound good? But Paul, do we want to jump into, how many crops do you have in there now? Where are we at?
All right, so I'm coming down to the last couple crops. So we're going to transition fairly soon here. I'm just adding a garlic planting in here. Garlic is going to be overwintered, so it's going to actually have a long days to maturity. We're going to do a similar thing with garlic, pulling that harvest time later on. All right, so I have one more strawberry. So if you guys have a quick question you want to talk about, we can do that. Otherwise, I can filibuster here while I add strawberries in.
Well, all right, I'll just jump in on a topic if that's okay, I guess.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it, Stephen.
So here's a great tip for you guys. I want you guys to think about your garden in 3 layers vertically. So you have your crops that grow really low to the ground, like greens, radishes, lettuce, cilantro, some of your fresh herbs, parsley. You have stuff that kind of grows in the middle zone, which would be peppers, eggplant, green beans, like bush beans, things like that. And then the higher crops, which usually you're trellising, so that would be tomatoes, cucumbers, maybe you're trellising melons. You can even trellis different types of squashes. And you can utilize these layers together to grow more crops in less space. So this is a technique called interplanting, but I'm kind of combining this idea of growing, throughout space. So an example would be if you're growing tomatoes or cucumbers trellised, they're going to go up, 6 to 8 feet possibly, depending on your trellis. Well, what can you fit underneath that might even like a little bit of shade? Well, I've tried a lot of different things over the years, and things like lettuce, radishes, green onions, baby arugula, parsley, basil, all of those work incredibly well underneath the really high growing crops. And some of them even benefit for that little bit of shade that they get as well. Now, when you're growing tomatoes or cucumbers, they really need a lot of light. And I like to tell people that if you're growing a root or a fruit, especially fruit, it needs a lot of sunlight. But some of these things like greens, especially anything that you're just growing for the leaf, it barely needs sunlight. And I've actually grown many greens like kale, chard, lettuce in the winter in complete shade. So with no direct sunlight, it will still grow. It will not grow as fast as if it's getting direct sunlight, but it just goes to show you that when you're just growing a leaf, it doesn't need as much sunlight as you might think it does. But things like a beet, that's a longer growing root, those take 50 to 60 days to grow. They need a little bit more sunlight. So if you were going to plant those underneath a tomato or a cucumber, you might want to space those a bit further apart than you would a radish, because a radish will grow in like 30 days. So you can play with a lot of those ideas and get extremely creative with what you plant, especially if you don't have as much space, or maybe in the future you're going to have more beds, but this season you don't have as many beds, but you still want a more variety of crops. Well, these are techniques that you can use to help yourself get more variety.
Awesome tips there, Stephen. Those are real gems. Yeah. So I am ready to transition here into, we're going to build out a few succession plantings of these crops. I actually already added one here, you may have noticed, with the carrots. So we've got a spring planting of carrots, right? And I went ahead and added a fall planting of carrots here. It's going to come in as you get into the early fall. It's going to harvest. And just want to point out how you can do that here in seed time as well. By the way, there's this little panel here called My Crops, and this is kind of like your master list of crops that you're growing here, right? So we're going to come down here and add in a succession planting of onions here. And the way that you can do that is there's a little 3-dot menu next to the planting that you want to add a succession to. You're going to click that, and you get this little menu that drops down, and you can click Add Succession. And it's going to add a succession planting of that crop based on the succession spacing that is set in the settings. So under advanced settings here, you can come down, we have succession spacing 4 weeks apart here for the onions, right? So you can adjust that actually, you could change it to 6, 5 or 6 or whatever. We'll just leave it with the default of 4, but that is what determines what creates your succession spacing there. I'm going to add a couple more successions here. And yeah, I'll turn it back over to you guys. Continue sharing some awesome tips and tricks with the garden.
So Stephen, talking about successions, you had mentioned earlier that there are a number of things you like to get at least 2 succession plantings in. Are there any crops where you like to get more successions?
Potato is probably the one that I want the most successions, because that has been the trickiest one for me to get to last all the way through winter, just in my garage. Sweet potatoes, garlic, turmeric, that's really easy to sit in a garage over winter and not have it rot. But potatoes, I've found that, they eye out more quickly. And if I don't do a final succession that I can pull out of the ground before the first frost or right after the first frost, then it's kind of tricky to make it all the way through. But I have discovered that even on those potatoes that will eye out like 2 feet long, you can still plant those the next season and they will actually grow potatoes for you. So it is possible. You don't have to have a root cellar to do it, but that one for sure. Tomatoes, I need to do 2 plantings in the summer because there's such hardcore fungal pressure here in the summer, and we get a lot of rain that usually by July or August, most of my tomatoes are pretty spent and they have tomato blight or some other fungal disease. So that I have found to be important to do a second planting of. So I'll do the first planting around May 1st, so I escape the first frost, or sorry, the final frost. And then I will do another planting in maybe late June or July, and that can get me all the way through till October. Yeah, cucumbers are another good one I really recommend, because me and my wife, we've been doing lots of pickling and some canning. And for the pickles, for cucumbers, we really realized that it's the first amount of cucumbers, like the first month, those are the best cucumbers to pickle, because as the plant ages and gets older, the cucumbers just get less sweet, a little bit more bitter. So then you've ended up, making your pickles, and now they have a bit of a bitter aftertaste to them. So now we really try to pickle those first crop of cucumbers, or we'll wait till the second succession, and then we'll utilize those plants for our pickles so that we can have cucumbers through the winter.
Awesome. Hey, I'm gonna just jump in here real quick, and I want to talk about the successions here. I went ahead and added our succession plantings in, and we're going to add a couple more, actually. I'm going to add some lettuce successions here because I want you to see what happens. I'm going to filter the calendar so you just see the lettuce plants here. When I add these succession plantings in of lettuce, we're doing them 2 weeks apart, and that is to plan for basically a continual harvest of lettuce in our spring here. If I add a third one in here, you'll notice, because shortly we're going to be looking at the space in our garden, right, of where these plants are growing. And if you think about it, a plant is growing in the garden. If I turn off the bed preparation time, these plants are transplanted. So they're not actually taking up space in the garden until they are transplanted into the garden. So between transplanting and harvesting is when they are taking up space. So you're going to need some space for this planting to grow. You're going to need some space for this planting to grow. But by your third planting, you could actually be transplanting this back in where you were harvesting out your first planting of lettuce here, right? And we'll look at that in a second here when we do the actual visual layout of the garden. Another example here is it doesn't have to be just one crop to the next. It doesn't have to just be like a single crop of successions. Here we have planned in a succession planting of tomatoes down here. Whoops. Let me filter down to just show the tomatoes. You see most of our tomatoes are planted in the spring here, but we've got a succession planting, or I should say Stephen has a succession planting planned in here of tomatoes. And what's going to happen is those tomatoes are going to go in after his cucumbers are done, right? So they're going to actually take the place of the cucumbers. So it can be one crop followed by a different type of crop. You can set up succession plantings in that way as well, maximizing the space in your garden. And like I said, we'll look at that very shortly here. Here's the neat thing. Once you have your crop plan planned out, so we've got a whole bunch of plantings here. You can come in, you can sort them by, for example, seeding date, so you can see what's going in when. You can also sort them by harvesting time. And let me just ask you in the chat, how many of you like the idea of having a continual harvest out of your homestead all season long, right? All year long? Here you can see this harvest. It's kind of a cascading harvest as you come into the summer, right? You're harvesting something all season long coming into the fall. You could actually take things through the winter. We don't have time to go into that in this session, but we want to just show you that really quickly here. And then the really cool thing with seed time here is once you have this plan built in, all of these plantings will automatically get compiled over into a weekly task list. So if you come over to your tasks here, it's not going to show anything right now, but I can jump forward into January of next year, right? And it's going to show me what I should be seeding for that week. So once you get to that week, you'll go to your task list and you can mark those tasks off as completed. If you go to the next week, it's going to show you, hey, you might have something that's overdue. You've got a couple other things that are due this week. You come in, you mark those off as completed. And as long as you have your plan set up right now, following your plan is like following a simple recipe in your kitchen. You're just every week, instead of trying to figure out what to do, when to do it, you jump into your task list. It's all right there. You go out and you do it in your garden. And kind of connected with that, just a brief little peek here. As you are doing those tasks in your garden, we built a journal that you can come and add journal entries, notes, observations of things that are happening. Like, let's say that you seeded your carrots and you noted something about the spacing, right? You spaced them, half an inch apart, and you just want to make a record of that. You can add an image, but then you can also actually link that journal entry back to those specific carrots. You can say, hey, this is my rainbow carrots number 1. You can tag it as seeding and save that into your journal entry. And then later on, you can come back and search and filter your notes and look back at any other records and stuff based on any of the crops that you're growing in seed time as well. So just wanted to give you a quick little sneak peek there at the task list and the journal, and how as you're going through your plan, you can be using those two aspects here of seed time to really just maximize and take away the stress and overwhelm, really, of the whole implementation process of your garden. But hey, let me ask, how many of you would like to take this garden plan that we have here and build it out visually with the layout and map everything into where it should go? You guys ready for that? I'm going to switch over, and this is pretty exciting to us because this is a new release of Seed Time just this year. It's pretty hot off the press, as it's one of the most asked for features that we've had as we've been building the program is, hey, I want to be able to lay out my garden, right? So I'm going to pull up Seed Time layout here, and to get started, we're going to create a blank layout. I'm going to go ahead and just put in a large enough canvas. This canvas can be any size. This is the canvas that you're working out in the background here. So you'll see that there's a grid there down at the bottom left. It might be small for you all on your screens, but there is a little guide that will tell you the grid spacing. And then you've got a bunch of tools here to start using in your garden plan. And what I'm going to do is we're going to start out with building Stephen's raised beds. Okay, so I'm going to come here to the planting locations, and you can pull in multiple different shapes. I'm going to pull in a rectangular bed here as a raised bed. Right now I'm going to snap these to the grid, just makes it easier to work with. And
how do you set that? Oh,
yeah, down on the right-hand bottom side, there's a little snap to grid, or you can unsnap it.
You might not be able to see that if our pictures are in the way.
Oh yeah, our pictures are in the way. We can actually turn off the cameras. But if I turn off, well, I'll turn off mine. You guys, if you figure out how to turn off yours, you can do so as well. The width here, I'm going to go ahead and set these two Stephen's beds, right? So they were 12, the raised beds were 12 feet by 3 feet, right? So we're going to apply that, and just going to zoom in a little bit more. So we got a 12 foot by 3 foot, and we're going to name it raised bed 1. Apply. Now I can come in, I can duplicate that, pull it over here, and make this raised bed 2, right? Apply. Now I can select both of those. I can duplicate both of those, and we're going to create our next raised beds here, right? So this is going to be raised bed 3 and raised bed 4. I'm going to keep doing this, and we're going to build out the rest of our raised beds here as well.
You erased the bed.
Oh, did I? Sure enough. Raised bed 3. I'm going to finish building out these raised beds and the in-ground beds here. And while I do that, I'll transfer it back over to you guys.
So, Stephen, we're talking about layout. What guides you in deciding where to plant what?
Yeah, so I recommend everybody have raised beds and in-ground beds, if you can afford to build the raised beds. Just because raised beds make it a lot easier to plant and harvest certain things. So in my raised beds, I like to have the things that I might crop in and out with transplants. With the in-ground beds, I like to use a direct seeder. So like the Earthwave seeder is a great one for just $100. Or if you are a market gardener, then the Jong JP1 is an amazing direct seeder. So with that thing, I can plant radishes and beets and carrots, and it plants it perfectly in the bed for me and closes up the furrow, and it's just an extremely important tool. You also want in-ground beds if you want to do stuff like winter squash and watermelon, sweet potato, anything that's vining. You need a lot more space for it. And if you do that in a raised bed, it just takes up way too much room in a raised bed. The raised bed is really, to me, the best things that go into that are greens, herbs, peppers, eggplants. You could even do bush beans in there. Carrots aren't as good in those just because carrots take so long to grow. You're using up a lot of space for a lot of time. But, if that's all you have, then that's great too. One little tip, if you do only have raised beds and you want to grow some of these larger crops like a summer squash or a watermelon or things that are going to get really big and take over your whole raised bed, plant them in the corner of your raised bed. And as that plant gets bigger, just grab the vines and put them outside of the raised bed and let it grow down and off to the side onto the ground. But its roots are in the soil where you're watering and they're getting nutrients, but the leaves aren't taking up all of that room of the soil of your raised bed, so that you can put other stuff there to let it grow there.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's huge. Can you add just a quick list of all the crops that you do that with?
The raised bed?
Yeah, the kind of canopying the vines.
Yeah, so you could do that with sweet potatoes. Summer squash is a really good one to do that with. I've done it with watermelons, honeydews, winter squash. I've done some tomatoes and cucumbers in raised beds, but I have taller raised beds. So if you do a trellis on top of that, it just kind of gets too tall and crazy. So I just stick to doing, because I like to do indeterminate varieties, and indeterminate means it's the vining type. So they just want to keep growing up and up and up. But determinate, I have thought about maybe switching my tomatoes to determinate, because those are the bush type tomatoes, because they put out the majority of their fruit and then they die. Whereas the indeterminate will just keep growing on and on forever. And I kind of mentioned that I was having a problem with diseases and fungal problems. Well, that would help me to get around that. And I could just grow it out for the main crop, and then the plant's done, and I can replant another determinate tomato plant. And those work good in raised beds for sure.
All right, we are ready to start adding crops to our beds here. We've got our raised beds, we've got our field beds. We can actually group these together, by the way, and organize them. So there's a layers panel inside the layout tool here. And so we'll just go ahead and group all of these together, and that will be helpful with organization. And so I'll add a new group for that one, and we'll rename it field beds. All right, once you have your beds, for the sake of this build, we're probably just going to stick with putting beds in. You can put in landmarks, you can put in trees, houses, you can put in all kinds of other things to just give you context to your garden. So if you wanted to build your house on the side, you could do that as well.
You can shape your beds just about any shape you want as well.
Yes, that's a good point. Like if you come into a bed here, you can customize it, you can add points and shape it to any size or shape that you want to. So there's a ton of flexibility with that. And they could be raised bed, they could be containers, they could be window boxes, right? This is really any space that you're going to be growing a crop in. So what we're going to do next is pull up our crop list, and you'll notice that this looks kind of familiar, right? This is our timeline here of these crops, and the way seed time is built, we have filtered these down to just show the in-ground times for the crops. So this is just from the transplanting time of the onions through to the harvest time of the onions, right? And there is a little slider here that you can move across. And what happens is when you move this slider across, what we're doing is we're planning for our garden for the future, right? But we want to know when these crops are taking up space in our garden and when they're not taking up space in our garden, so we can maximize that space. So you move the slider forward and it will allow you to add any of the crops at that time into your garden plan, which we'll do in just a second here. And crops that are not growing at that time, you can't add into your garden plan at that time, right? So we are going to start out here, and what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to sort it by the in-ground date. So we know, okay, we're going to start right up at the top of the crops that are going to be going into the ground. And we can do this here with the carrots, right? Lettuce bed. We're going to put these, I just said lettuce bed. With the carrots here, we will put these carrots in field bed number 2 here. And you drag and you drop the planting in. With carrots, it goes in pretty small because it's just it just puts a single carrot in there. But then you can take that planting and you can expand it out, right? So I'm going to expand out this planting of carrots. The reason why it's a block right now is because carrots, there's going to be so many plants in there. If I zoom in really close, it might show the individual plants, or it might not because they're just really close together.
Yeah, that's pretty tight.
Yeah, they're pretty tight. So I'm gonna go up and show.
So that spacing was already set in the calendar.
Yeah, the spacing is set in the calendar, and you can adjust it. You can change it here. We'll show you that in a second here. But I'm going to grab this asparagus here, right? And this asparagus is going to go into field bed 10 here, and this asparagus is going to be a foot apart, right? So here you can see the individual plants themselves, and we're going to pull out a whole bed here of asparagus that's growing here. If you want to change that plant spacing, you can click edit here, and let me move this over.
You can also notice on those dimensions at that spacing, it tells you how many plants are in there. On the
yes, yes. Right here's 30 plants right there. You can change this. You can change this plant spacing to 18 inches apart if you want to, and you're going to notice that the plant spacing will get much larger there for the asparagus. I didn't save it, so that's why it didn't put it in. Now I messed it up here. Here we go. So if I do 18 inches apart, and you can set the row spacing as well. So if you wanted to have specific row spacing, like 12 inches apart, you can do that. You can apply it. Anyways, there's a lot of different, you can set it to be an offset spacing. You'll see that in some of the crops that we do here. You can set it to be a square spacing as well. We're going to go ahead and leave it at the default 12 inches here. And just going to put a single row of asparagus in here. So I'm going to go through and add a bunch of these crops in one at a time. And while I do that, again, I'm going to transfer it back over to the rest of you. Give us some more tips and tricks.
I liked your suggestions to layer your crops, having the low-lying ones and then the medium size ones and then the taller ones. I've been playing around with that in my garden too, and that's kind of fun, trying to fit things into extra spaces. What are you did mention a few things that you've tried like that. Are there some things like that we're going to be putting into the garden here, into this plan?
I don't think we had any inside of this, but
okay.
You could set it up in the program for sure.
Yeah, I want to emphasize that this layout is designed so that you can do companion planting and intercropping. It's not too hard to set it up that way.
Right. You can stack as many on there as you would like to fit, or even if it doesn't look like it fits, you can put them on there just so you have a reference point on the layout. It kind of depends on the program. Again, if you're a little bit more of really focusing on permaculture or companion planting, and you're really focusing in that direction, and you're going deep into, I'll say the weeds, but it's not the weeds. You're going deep into the planting companion relationship between root exudates or smells of certain flowers, like planting marigolds that push away whiteflies or things like that. This will accompany that. For a homesteader, there's a lot of other chores associated with homesteading, and it all depends on your growing preference, technique, and we're trying to create something for everyone. And so, your creativity is the limit here. Hopefully we can spark some ideas for your garden, for your space. This is literally going to be Stephen's garden, and the techniques that he likes growing in. And there's no one size fits all. And this is only in Tennessee. I just want to put that caveat out there. So this is where he's located, his farm, his microclimate. So within that, Stephen, can you talk a hair on microclimates and what is a microclimate? What does that even mean?
Yeah, that's a big topic actually. And so obviously we have our zones, our USDA zones that everybody talks about, right? 7A, 10A, 7B, all that stuff. And that's just referring to the averaged lowest temperature that you receive during the year. But even, at farm 10 minutes north of me, sometimes he will get rain and I won't get the rain. Like I'm in some sort of little pocket here where it misses me more than it misses him. Or, I have a microclimate on my property down in my field where I have my sheep. It's the lowest part of my property and kind of the lowest part of the whole valley where I'm at. And you'll notice that in the mornings especially, there's a cool draft that comes right down through this like creek bed, and way more chill hours there. So, maybe if you want to, certain trees might do better there because you're getting even more chill hours. But maybe I wouldn't want to put really frost sensitive crops in a microclimate like that because they would get damaged more easily. So, this is something that you got to pay attention to on your own property and figure out where those locations are. But typically low-lying areas, the lowest areas of your property, frost and cool air settles down at the lowest points. And the higher points, they can usually escape some of that frost. You can just kind of pay attention to that in the cold morning. Sometimes you'll notice certain areas will and won't get frost. Some areas will or won't get more moisture. Depending on what's around or the slope of your hill. So,
yeah, Stephen, just an interesting fact. Our farm here is kind of hilly, and our main growing area is down in the valley, and so we're in the frost pocket, and so that's just something. It's not quite so nice because it's in the frost pocket, but there were other reasons for it being there. One was that it has gravity feed water. So, there's always give and take. But anyways, one thing that's really interesting is that we have a house up on the hill, and it's not always, but it can be as much as 10 degrees difference between the house up on the hill and the field down in the valley.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And just goes to show you, there's just
and that's an example on one farm. One farm. A lot of people, based on where they're growing, will look at the weather on their phone or the weather app, and they'll think they're not due for a frost. But there are a lot of areas where you're going to have a 10-degree swing. That was me growing in Arizona, where I was down on the river bottom. That's where I was growing. Same thing for water and kind of ground that I needed. But at the same time, it was 10 and even more every single morning. It would be that much cooler. So if you can imagine the weather forecast being 38 and then it's going to be 28 that night. That's a huge, drastic difference for the plant. To be able to respond to that. And so always make sure you have a thermometer out there at the plant height where it's growing, and keep some records, add it in the journal, make sure you know how to manage that. So
and it's, for us, like I said, it's not always consistently 10 degrees different. It'll almost surely be 10 degrees different if it's a clear night and very little wind.
Definitely.
If it's overcast, it's probably going to be about the same on the hilltop as it is down in the valley.
Right. Super cool. Paul, you are pretty far along in this plan, and you're like a seed time machine. It's almost like you designed or inputted or created this thing.
Working hard at it, man. We've come down to peppers. We're moving on to tomatoes here. We're going to pull these tomatoes up into field bed number 3 here.
That's a lot of peppers.
Yeah, what are you doing with all those peppers, Steven?
Yeah.
Well, the bell peppers we eat, or I like those because you can freeze them, whether they're hot peppers or not. They freeze just super well. You don't even have to blanch them. The other thing we like to do is make. We love like Mexican style pickled. You do pickled jalapenos, carrots, onions, garlic, all in the jar. It's so with dill because we grow dill too. So we live on that all year.
Right.
So I'm going to
note. Go ahead, Paul.
I'm just going to note here that Steven has multiple different types of tomatoes growing here, right? So he has some Cherokee, but he's just doing a smaller amount. San Marzano, just a smaller amount of San Marzano, a little bit more of Cherokee purple. Actually, I think I got that backwards from what you were actually doing, Steven. But then he's got a whole row of black cherry here. So with seed time, you can mix and match your plants. You can do companion planting, like you could come in and put lettuce in between these if you wanted to. We're not going to do that here just right this second, but just wanted to point that out as well.
So even though those all look like they're the same tomato, there's several different tomato crops in that bed. That's what Paul's saying.
Yeah.
Well, while we're talking on microclimate and tomatoes specifically, that's where the majority of my growing experience is. I grew a ton of tomatoes. I've grown as many as 4,000 vines in a year, which is quite a few to pick.
It's a lot.
Yeah, I would sell and move about 2,000 pounds a week, and so that's a lot of tomatoes. But within that, you got to know your context and your microclimate. So if you're in an arid climate, you're going to have the advantage of not having tons of fungal pressure. When it's very dry and your humidity is low, like 10%, you have some challenges there. However, when you create a microclimate using shade cloth over the top of those tomatoes, you're going to get significantly better results. That's the same practice if you're growing in a tunnel, whether that be a high tunnel in ground or a caterpillar tunnel or even low tunnels. When you create that shade can be accomplished from shade cloth. Even early on, insect netting will provide a little bit of shade, or frost cloth if you're trying to extend your season and push the limits. Because when you push limits in market garden world, that means big money. If you can show up to market with something that nobody else has, you can ask a little bit more for your crop. And so that's a big advantage for pushing the limits. That also is, if you have multiple different farms, knowing those locations. That's a little bit on growing tomatoes. Now, spacing and airflow, that's the other microclimate thing, how you're pruning. If you're pruning the lower ends of your tomatoes because you're in a Midwestern climate or a humid climate, to reduce fungal pressure, doing significant pruning and creating that spacing of your tomatoes a little further apart than you might in an arid climate. That's going to really, really help. So I don't want to go too crazy into that, but that's just a little bit.
Here's a little note. You can see here, Stephen is putting in his sweet potatoes and into the same bed where prior was his pole green beans. His green beans are actually, if I filter this down, to the green beans and sweet potatoes. His green beans, I'm sorry, it was his bush green beans here. His green beans are going to be wrapping up their harvest, but he could actually plant those slips on either side of those green beans as they're wrapping up their harvest and then pull the green beans out afterwards. So that's just another little example of a succession planting from one going on to the next. I'm going to pull some sweet potatoes up here as well. And we're getting close to coming down to the end of our crop list here. Put in some. Now, do you remember I told you that our succession planting of tomatoes is going to replace the cucumbers? Watch this bed down here. You'll see that we have our cucumbers growing down here, and we have these tomatoes. And actually, you'll notice that there is some space in between here, right? Where those cucumbers, perhaps they could continue harvesting through that time space. Or what we could do is we could adjust this tomato planting, and we could pull the transplanting time for the tomatoes earlier and maximize that space a little bit. And it's going to automatically reschedule the seeding time. And
so, Paul,
we can fill them in here.
You've pulled the transplant time here. Pulled it earlier. Is that going to adjust on the calendar also?
Yes. So it'll adjust on the calendar also.
So it'll show when to seed. Yeah.
Yeah. If I turn the seeding date back on, you'll see that it moved forward. I could actually move it a little bit further forward because those cucumbers don't actually come out until right about there, right? So we got a little space in between them now. And now these tomatoes are coming in and taking their place in that bed.
And those too, like you mentioned with the sweet potatoes, you could plant the cucumber transplants a little bit early, right before the tomatoes come out too.
Yeah.
And you could just cut the tomato vine versus trying to rip it out of the ground, because those vines go everywhere and it might mess up your transplants.
Yeah.
Right.
So one thing I want to make note of here is that, seed time makes it easy to get your crops on the calendar or on the layout, either one. And then as you can visualize things, you can see that, it would be nice to move this a little later or a little earlier. And it's very easy to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You can make adjustments based on how you see things are starting to turn out.
All right, so we've got some carrots in here. Turn off those seeding tests. Yeah, go ahead, Luke.
From the poll, there was a significant number of home gardeners, and I want to encourage the home gardeners out there. All of us have been growing, kind of for a living for a significant number of years. We've had huge losses, huge losses. I've lost over 2,000 tomato vines. You're going to fail in farming or growing or gardening, but we've never failed. We've only learned. We've learned what not to do in some cases. You always want to study those who are successful in your local area for growing tips, tricks, things of that nature. And I would always try to study those that are a level above you, not even necessarily in like the size or space. And I'm not just like doing like a small farm pitch, but those who are farming for their living, they have to put a little bit more education into this because they will die if they don't, or have to leave the farm and not do something. So check out what small farmers are growing, how they're growing, find them at farmers market and talk with them. You're going to get so many different tips. That's also like the next tip for getting inexpensive plants. Most farmers and small scale commercial market gardeners will grow a lot of plants and plant starts for their community. So let's just say you plan something and then life happens and it doesn't go the way you planned. You miss a planting date, you miss a planting week, you miss a planting month, and you're like, man, I'm already at transplant. I can't start this. And you're like, oh, but I can go to my farmer's market and my local farmer might have some transplants I can purchase that are going to be ready, and I can date that back from when looking at my calendar. That's just a really good way to stay ahead of the curve. The other thing I want to challenge you with, just because you haven't been able to do it doesn't mean that it can't be done. I've grown in really drought conditions, 110 plus degree weather, and I've harvested lettuce, and I've harvested broccoli, and I've harvested all of this regularly through the season, and it was not bitter, and it was good. There are techniques that you can learn that will help really expand your growing. So using this tool is going to be one of the biggest helpful points for you as you're getting going, so that you don't have the overwhelm. That's the goal of this, is not to overwhelm you. It's to help be a tool to support you in your gardening endeavors. So that was a long.
By the way, I should have just been duplicating these. You can actually take a planting and you can duplicate it and move it to another bed. So Stephen's plan is to grow lots of garlic this year. So we're going to move a bunch of garlic into these beds, and then we're going to step back, zoom out, and we'll just scroll through this plan with you here so you can see a little bit.
This is a lot of garlic. That's five rows of garlic in each bed, huh?
Yeah, I'm going to be selling a little bit of it too. Okay. Seed garlic.
Yeah. So those are 30-foot long beds, and it's 5.
Yeah.
What did I do? Yeah, I did 5 or 6 rows. I did like 6-inch by 8-inch spacing this year. See what that would do.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right, so we're going to take just a minute here to walk through the build. Okay, by the way, we just finished the build, and we have our plantings in here. So we're going to take a minute just to look through it real quickly here. We've got carrots coming in to the plan here.
So we're scrolling down the timeline.
Yep.
And watching things come in and out as we go.
Yep. You see that we've got extra other crops that are coming in. We've got some onions here dropping in. We have our lettuce. We have our spinach down here. Now, one thing that I don't think that I did was incorporate our lettuce successions. So here you can see we have 3 lettuce successions. So what Stephen could do down here with this bed is he could actually pull this back and just fill it up half of the bed with this first planting of lettuce, come in, fill the rest of the bed with this next planting of lettuce. And then around the time that the first planting is coming out, you could actually move this planting of lettuce down a week, right? And this third planting of lettuce could come in and fill that spot. And now he's got some succession plantings of lettuce, right, that are kind of creating a continual harvest down on the lettuce level down here. So
you could also do radishes on the other half too. Those are both 30-day crops, lettuce and radishes. You could swap them.
That's a great idea.
Great. Yeah. Yes.
And you get some diversity in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll keep coming along as we come into the summer. You can see our cucumbers, our peppers have come in. We've got tomatoes in here now. We've got green beans growing up here. We've got watermelon, winter squash here. I know we're going through this quickly. The asparagus is going to just stay there because it's a perennial crop, right? But as we go through, I want you to watch and see our onions dropped out here, right? And as we continue on, that was our first planting of onions. And look at what happened here. These were carrots down here, carrots rainbow mix. And as we go along, the carrots are going to finish up. And as they're finishing up, Stephen is coming back in with Yukon Gold potatoes to take their place, right? As we keep going here, you may notice that these beds are emptying out. We could, if we wanted to, come in here and fill those in with some cover crop or something like that. There is space here that we could be growing something else. So that's one of the keys here with Seed Time is what it does is once you have these crops put in, as you're scrolling through your plan, you can start noticing when there are gaps in your garden and when you could be planting something else. Like we talked about before, we have the cucumbers down here. We filled this gap in here with our succession planting of tomatoes, right? Coming on down here, we come in, we've got our, what was it? Our watermelons are coming out up at the top here. Down here, coming up soon, we add our potatoes back in here for our third planting of potatoes. So that gives you a quick sneak peek of how once you have your crops put in here, you can scroll through your season. And like we said, we've noticed, and we don't have time to go into it into more depth tonight, but we've noticed that, hey, we've got several beds in here. Stephen has several beds in here that we could put something in through this main, 2 to 3 month section of the season. And whether that's just a cover crop or it's a short, fast crop that you grow, you could fit some stuff in there and kind of continue to maximize the space of this homestead plan. All right. Let us know in the chat. Yeah.
Put our picture back.
Let us know in the chat what? We'll let them say that one.
Let us know in the chat if this is helpful for you guys. I know that this was kind of a fast pace. We're just nailing crops in there, building out the layout, dropping them in the layout, showing some of those succession plantings. We want to give you a vision of what can be done on a homestead level and how you can maximize that space. Luke, you're going to say something?
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to say is a lot of this is zone dependent or geographic location dependent. So if you are far south, your planting schedule looks very different. Tomorrow we're going to be having Nina on. She's from very southern Florida. Her spring, if you have it, is September. It is not like March. That's like peak growing season. Everything's in there. Another very successful farmer out there.
Any of you who are in the far south of the U.S., you need to be on tomorrow.
Yeah. And you're going to get tips and tricks on planting dates, because all the planting dates for Florida or even South Texas or lower, they're not accurate. Most of the stuff you find out there on the internet, not accurate. That's one of the challenges with, Chat GPT was really popping up there, and it is a very powerful tool, a great tool, but make sure you cross check the information that comes from that, because it's pulling from the entire internet. It's kind of the equivalent of Wikipedia.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you all, how many of you would like to see a little sneak peek into the future of Seed Time and what we have planned down the road? Because we've just showed you, the calendar, the task list, the journal, layout, mapping it all out. But we have some pretty awesome plans coming up down the road. How many would you like to see a little sneak peek of that? I'm going to go ahead and pull up some slides here. All right. So yes, see some yeses flowing in here. Seed Time is really, to be honest, still at the early stages of being built. And some of the things that we have coming down the line that we're very excited about is, number one, custom tasks. What if you could enter anything into Seed Time right now? Right now, it's mainly just crops, right, that you can add in.
We built it for annuals.
Yeah. And when we roll out custom tasks, it's going to include the ability to add in perennial crops and really just about anything that you want to add to your plan to really maximize your homestead, your garden, your farm.
You could use a task list for beekeeping.
Yeah, beekeeping, anything that you want.
Your chickens.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
On top of custom tasks, what if you had weather data incorporated into your calendar? So you had forecasting ahead as well as historical data. So you go into your calendar, you can see the highs and the lows, going backwards. You see your week. You can see the forecast ahead at a glance as you're planning out what you're going to do in your garden, right? Does that sound like a dream? Very exciting. It's just going to integrate directly into the calendar, just like the other tools integrate together. But believe it or not, it can get even better than that, because due to popular demand request from the Seed Time community, we are also planning to build out Seed Time inventory. How many of you are tired of sifting through random half-used seed packets? I literally just had someone email me about this today, I believe it was, saying, hey, when is this going to be built out? Never sure what you have on hand, what you need to purchase. Seed Time inventory is going to be a simple place where you can keep track of what you have on hand, what you need to purchase coming up, right?
That'll be more than just seed packets. You have amendments, who knows what all.
Yes.
That you purchase for your garden.
And on top of seed time inventory, for those of you that want to just get a little bit more detailed, we're also planning to build out seed time records. So if you're crazy about records, just wish you could keep track of how many tomatoes you were able to harvest, etc. That's going to be a super simple way to keep track of those records. And along with records, kind of a sister suite to records is analytics, because records are awesome, but spreadsheets full of numbers that can be overwhelming, mind-boggling, right? So we're going to create a way that you can visualize those easily. Very exciting things coming down the line with seed time. And how many of you would like to, like we mentioned earlier, take your garden, your homestead, and replace the grocery store, create that continual harvest plan throughout the entire season without the stress and the overwhelm of having to look stuff up in books, Googling when I should seed my lettuce, right? Being able to quickly and easily do that. That is what seed time was built for. Like CJ here, who says, I now have a clear plan of what to do when, or Jen says, I'm a fairly new gardener and this is so helpful. Callie says, seed time definitely made it easier to plan and stay on task and be confident that I'm planting things at the right time. Or Stacy, who said, organization, right? It's really helped me be less anxious and about growing everything and gave me a ton of confidence in managing a whole garden. So what we are really excited about tonight is we got a special opportunity for you. And it all starts with, it takes all of us together to bring seed time to life. To be honest, from the beginning, seed time has been built by the gardening community. We launched with a Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign. It was funded in 10 minutes, went on to become the second most funded app on Kickstarter at the time of the launch. And all of that is just to really say that and highlight that this isn't just our project. This is a community project. We can't do this ourselves. It has been the community banding together of gardeners, farmers, and homesteaders that has made seed time happen. We don't have mega donors. We don't have angel investors. And if you're catching the vision of seed time, if you like the experience, if you would like to also experience less stress and overwhelm planning and growing your garden and farm, and would love, find it in your heart to help support this project at the same time, here's what we're excited about sharing tonight. You see, during this event, we are also, while we are building out these plans for you, we're also hosting out a fundraiser to continue building seed time into the best garden and farm planner ever, which means we're opening up an opportunity for you to get either 40% off your first year of paid access level to seed time. We have a free account, and many of you have jumped into that already. We want to give you a special incentive to jump in with a year of access to a paid level of seed time, which additionally gets access to the layout that you just saw, etc., or $100 off lifetime access to seed time as well. And the key with lifetime accounts is they're not open to the public. In fact, to be honest, they aren't even available inside your seed time account. We only open them up at limited time opportunities like this one. But this is your opportunity to jump in and never have to worry about paying again, which is kind of cool, right? So here's what's included in your seed time basic or unlimited account. We'll just walk through it real quickly here for you. Here's everything you get when you get an upgraded level access to seed time. With seed time calendar, you'll get unlimited calendars. It's one calendar for basic level of access. At the unlimited level, you get unlimited calendars. Both levels get unlimited built-in crop categories, unlimited planting schedules, custom crop categories, custom varieties. You'll also get access to the new seed time layout, unlimited layouts for the unlimited level, one layout for the basic, and you get full access to seed time task journal, the classroom, and community. We didn't even really touch on this, but there's a whole little masterclass video lesson series. You click on the tasks, it'll tell you what to do, how to do them. Plus, seed time also has a store, and when you jump in with a paid level membership to seed time, you will get our seed time plus discount, which is 20% off all seed packets in the seed time store. This is huge. Like you could win your investment back just in the amount you saved from seeds. This discount is guaranteed, may vary depending on market conditions, but we are guarantee you a discount, and we're pretty set at keeping it right here at that 20%. Plus, we have the future releases we were just talking about, seed time weather, inventory records, analytics, that will be released also. to our paid users of Seed Time. So here is the special opportunity for you tonight. There's 3 different levels of options that you can jump in. You can jump in with 1 year of basic access to Seed Time. And normally that is $84, but you can get your first year for just $49. Second level here is 1 year of unlimited access to Seed Time. And that is at full price. We plan to retail that at $168. But right now you can jump in with your first year at just $99. Or if you want to jump in with that lifetime account, which are pretty special, we probably have some lifetimers here in the chat, I'm guessing. You can jump in for $100 off a lifetime account. So instead of $497, you can jump in for just $397. And what I'm going to do is pull up a link here. We're going to post it over the chat where you can click on that link to jump over and grab your account. And by the way, I should mention here that the lifetime account, you can do $397, or you can also do a split payment plan of 3 payments of $133, 100% as well. So you can click the link on this page. If you're ready to get started, you can click the link on this page or go to seedtime.us/join. And
if you're a lifetime account or you are already on a paid subscription, we just want to say thank you. We just want to say thank you for being a part. And we hope that there was some value added tonight, beyond, a little tiny sales pitch, but we can't do what we do without a little tiny sales pitch. I apologize. Shameless plug. We have to be able to, make some money to do this.
It is literally the way that we keep building Seed Time out. Yeah. So,
and it is very, very expensive to get this built.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Development costs the developers are super expensive to hire, especially high quality, super good developers. I just wanted to show you the page you're going to land on real quick. Up at the top, there's a quick access to grab that lifetime account if you want to. You can also scroll down and you'll see the 3 plans listed next to each other here: basic, yearly, unlimited, and the lifetime account. You can go down, you can take a look at everything that's included in them so you can compare them against each other. And if you continue scrolling down, of course, there's more information down on that page as well. Luke, maybe you could just type in the chat there as well the link, because sometimes people don't see that button come up.
I think Kelly's been putting it up
regularly.
Yeah, all across. So
there
if you scroll down any few minutes, it's definitely in there.
All right. We also just want to let you know that we do back this up, Seed Time up, with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So we are so confident that either Seed Time is going to make your gardening experience easier, your homestead planning easier, take away that stress and that overwhelm, that either it does that for you or come back within 30 days and we will give you a full refund, no questions asked. We 100% back it up. And also, as a special little thing for this fundraiser, we have something that is called the Seed Time Scholarship Fund. And this is a scholarship fund that we have been building, that we create at what the fund is for people in our community, worthy community members who may not have the funds to be able to get a paid level of Seed Time access. And sometimes those people are the ones that need to be growing their own food the most, right? And it's also for worthy organizations, schools, nonprofits that could benefit from access to Seed Time as well. So 10% of all the funds raised during this fundraiser, we're going to match Seed Time Scholarship Fund and give equivalent level access and Seed Time to people who apply on the scholarship fund. And if you go to that page, seedtime.us/join, and you scroll down, in those little segments, there's actually a link over to the scholarship fund as well there. So I wanted to just give a quick little plug there with that.
Paul says Kate says the link is taking her to her free account.
Take you to your free account. Let us know if anyone else is having that problem as well. Otherwise, friends, now is the time to take your garden to the skies. We're early now. This is November. This is the time to plant. You grab a year of access to Seed Time now, and it's going to take you all the way through your next season, right? Into fall of next year. Now is the time to get everything set up and planned. And I was just thinking about it. In fact, it would be, I'm just going to pull this up really quickly, and then we're going to transition into question and answers here pretty shortly. But I was just thinking about this as we were, as I was planning this garden. If I pull this forward and we look here, look at this one row of tomatoes here, right? There's about 20 tomatoes in this plants in this row. And do you guys know about how much a tomato plant, what's an average harvest on a tomato plant, like pound wise?
Depends on variety, but
it really depends on it really depends on the variety. But anywhere between 5 pounds up to 20 pounds, right? Let's go with 5 pounds. If this is 20 plants of tomatoes along here, that's 100 pounds of tomatoes, which if you bought organic tomatoes at the grocery store, it's going to be $3 a pound. That's like $300 worth of tomatoes just on that tomato plant. And look at all of those other crops that you're growing as well. So, you just paid your seed time account just with that one line of tomatoes, if you think about it, right? So anyways, I just thought of that earlier as we were planning it out.
There's some other tricks too. We have an affiliate program. If you can get 3 other people to get paid subscriptions, you'll cover your own subscription.
Yep. All right.
There's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot of technical growing questions related to pest management, soil health, fertility, all those kinds of things that we're not going to be able to get to. Can we give them a little bit of primer of what's to come in the future, like 2024? Is that too early?
Yeah. No, let's go for it. Give a short little primer on that.
You give the primer. That way I'm not spilling more beans than I'm allowed to.
All right. Yeah, no, that's good one. So we have a lot planned for 2024. We're not going to spill the beans on everything right now, but think of it this way. And I'm going to throw this out as a little teaser instead of just throwing out the whole thing. What if you had a consistent, what if it was even on a weekly basis of just tips and tricks and expert insights taking you through the season? It would be cool even to relate it to like times of the season itself, where you could listen as you're on your way into work. Someone from Seed Time can be sharing about the tips and tricks and all kinds of stuff that is going to help impact your garden. Experts coming on and sharing what's going to help you in your garden, in your homestead and stuff like that. So we've got some really cool things planned coming up that are going to be made available to the entire Seed Time community. So if you've got questions and stuff like that, we even have ideas of ways that we could potentially answer a lot of your questions, maybe even have you come on live and answer live questions. I get pretty excited about that. I think that would be pretty cool. And so we've got ideas on that coming down the pipe. So we won't spill the whole beans on it. Again, I said it's just going to be like a little teaser, but stuff to think about as we come into the new year.
Sweet.
All right. Luke, do you see any questions that we should hit up on?
Let me answer this one chat, and then I will be jumping in there real quick.
All right. All right. Kathy's got a question. Just purchased Access a couple days ago. How do I upgrade to a lifetime account? So what you want to do, Kathy, if you already have a paid membership level of Seed Time, go to the same link, seedtime.us/join, and sign up with a lifetime account. Then send us an email, and our support team will go back and we'll give you a prorated refund for the time you didn't use on the paid subscription that you had, right? So we'll take care of you 100%. And we really prioritize support here with Seed Time. It's super important that you guys are supported. And so our support team is here to help you. There's even a message little link right down in the bottom right-hand corner of any seed time page, you can easily just message us and we'll help you out 100%. All right.
Perfect. For those who don't know, I do want to send everybody back to Stephen. Which is Nature's Always Right. Check out his YouTube. Check out, what would it be? Are you on InstaFace?
Yeah, I'm on
Instagram.
All
the socials.
Yeah, same name.
Awesome. So Nature's Always Right. Smash the like button. Comment in the chat. Help the algorithm move forward. Support him and his work and what he's doing.
Stephen's got a bunch of very good stuff up there, and especially if you're interested in growing and making your own fertility, I think he's got some very interesting things going.
Yes, absolutely.
Question that I would like answered, the link for the class tomorrow, is that the same link or is that a different link?
It should be the same link, but we will send it out by email. So you guys will make sure that you have it.
You'll have a fresh link, but it should be the same link as well. Again, you're not going to want to miss Nina.
Yes, yeah. These are being recorded, by the way. We will send the replays out by email as well. So just a heads up on that.
Awesome. Again, the discounted price for 1 year, I believe, is $99. Is that right?
I'm sorry, I was reading a chat here.
1 year discounted price.
1 year discounted price is $99 for an unlimited account, or $49 for a basic.
Right, and truthfully, that's a really great place to start. Try it for a month, get into it, dig into it, plan it, and then live in your task. The task window like I do, and you're going to be way better off than you were before at staying on task, which is my problem. Squirrel.
All right. Some of you have been having issues going to the page and it redirecting or something like that. Let us know. Send us an email. Because we just want to dive into that, make sure everything is working properly. Mm-hmm. Kevin, already subscribed on YouTube. We'll be watching your stuff, Stephen.
Wonderful.
All right.
I'm not trying to one you up, Stephen, but I did plant that much garlic today.
Oh, did you? Nice, man. That's a lot. Your back must be killing.
No, I got little ones.
Oh, there you go.
I got a small army. I have 4 kids.
That's awesome.
All right, Mark, there's a question here from Mark. Says, has there been any consideration for adding companion planting information to seed time? And yes, absolutely. We do have plans to add companion planting information, actually build it into the layout. So as you're adding crops, you can have suggested companion plants or suggested.
I think that there'll be some guidelines. Yeah, some guidelines and suggestions.
Yeah. Barbara says, Stephen's site, please. Stephen, what's the best place to get you? Is it via YouTube, via your website, via?
Yeah, I'd say, just search Nature's Always Right on YouTube, or naturesalwaysright.com is my website. And I have my videos up on there too.
Yes. A couple people are asking, how long is this this purchase membership special pricing going to be available? And it's going to be a limited time. We'll let you know by email, but definitely it's going to be available through these 3 sessions, and then we'll follow up by email as we figure out when the cutoff is going to be there. So keep an eye on your email, on your inbox, and we'll keep you posted with that as well. All right.
I love the prove it. Let me see your fingers line there. Here's the dry crack split from today, but I use a brush, so they clean up pretty nice with my soil. So.
All right. I see one other question here from Catherine. Can you move a layout from 1 year to the next as my hardscape does not change? Absolutely, Catherine. Actually, seed time is a rolling calendar. So this is one thing, with Steven's plan, as he builds in those garlic, those aren't going to harvest until the next year. And so that's going to affect what he plans for those beds the next spring, right? Because they're not going to harvest until when? Like June-ish?
Yeah, end of June usually.
Yeah. So as a rolling calendar, you're just going to roll from one year to the next. And what we are trying to do is encourage people to make gardening and growing food a part of their lifestyle, not just a single event, right? And so it's something that can be happening all season long. This is how you're going to have that continual harvest. You got to set up those plantings so they're happening all season long, take them through the winter, continue on into the next year, and make it part of your lifestyle on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis.
Yeah. The other important rollout that I think we failed to mention is mobile and tablet friendly.
Yes.
And that is actually on the first. That's the next thing, right? Is that the next thing?
That is, yeah. Next up on our list here is, sorry, I was reading chats. Next up on our list here is mobile friendly. We're going to be working on making the task list and the journal are currently mobile friendly, but we're going to be working on the calendar and the layout as much as possible, making those mobile friendly. And then from there, we're going to be moving on into custom tasks and then into all those other builds that we were talking about this evening as well. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Looks like most of the other questions we have talked about. We don't have, the good news is if you have questions, we have another night tomorrow night too, right? So we're going to be opening up for question and answers again tomorrow night. And feel free to come back, ask your questions again. Then if we didn't catch someone's question, in fact, some of them drop off of the chat if it goes too fast, so we can't see everyone. But we want to help every single one of you. Thank you for joining us. I want to give a special thank you, and maybe everyone could give Stephen a hand for sharing number one, your homestead plan, but also the nuggets of wisdom and information and growing information just throughout the building out of the plan as well. Thank you, Stephen, for coming on with us. It's been a real pleasure and honor to have you.
Super fun.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was fun getting to hang out with everybody.
Yeah. I think we are going to start wrapping up for tonight. We don't want to hold you all too late. I know that especially out on the East Coast, it's getting kind of late. But definitely a huge plug for tomorrow night. We're going to be doing a kitchen garden size. So we're shrinking down a little bit tomorrow, down into some raised beds, right? And building out that plan like Luke was talking about with Nina. Not going to want to miss that. It's going to be awesome. We're shifting zones too. So it's a lot of stuff that is happening there. And so check your emails for the replay link, the link for tomorrow night, and go grab your upgraded Seedtime account, seedtime.us/join. Every little bit counts. Your support means the world to us. A huge thank you to everyone who jumped in tonight already. Your support helps us continue building this out, and we really appreciate it. So thank you to all of you for investing in your time and in your garden enough to come in and jump on with us tonight and be a part of this session. We appreciate you.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, we're going to wrap it up. So good night, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow night.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Bye-bye.